Okay, let's talk about 1905. The British Viceroy Lord Curzon draws a line on a map, and just like that, the heart of Bengal is split in two. Now, on the surface, this was pitched as a simple administrative change, but what it really did was light a fire under the nationalist movement, create totally new ways of protesting, and, it planted these seeds of division that would haunt the subcontinent for decades. So today, we're going to unpack this huge moment in India's freedom struggle. We're going to see how a single line on a map ended up redrawing the future of an entire nation.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How did a decision, which was sold as a move for efficiency, get seen as this direct attack on Indian unity? And more importantly, how did the people of India fight back with such incredible force and creativity? That's what we're digging into. So here's our game plan. First, we'll get a sense of just how massive Bengal was before all this. Then we'll get into Lord Curzon's head and look at his real motives. After that, we'll check out the partition plan itself, see the explosive reaction it caused, and finally, we'll connect the dots to its long-term consequences and legacy.
All right, first things first. To really get why the partition was such a big deal, you have to understand what was being partitioned. And we're not talking about some small little region here. We are talking about a colossal, absolutely massive entity.
Think about this. Ever since the Battle of Buxar way back in 1765, the Bengal presidency was basically the crown jewel of British India. It was huge. It covered what we now know as West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Bangladesh, and Assam. And its capital, Calcutta, that wasn't just a state capital. It was the capital of all of British India, the absolute nerve center of the empire.
Now, let's just stop and think about that number for a second. 80 million people. That was the population of the Bengal province back then. To give you some perspective, that was more people than lived in Britain itself at the time. So right away, you can kind of see where the British were coming from when they said it was a huge administrative challenge.
And that administrative challenge had real-world consequences, especially for the folks in the eastern parts of the province. While Kolkata was booming as the imperial capital, the east was pretty much left behind. All the industry, the good schools, the jobs, everything was concentrated out west. This neglect was the official reason the British gave for why they needed to shake things up.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting and, frankly, pretty controversial. We have to ask, what were Lord Curzon's true intentions? Was this really just about better governance and helping the neglected East, or was there a deeper, more political game being played?
Now, before we go any further, we have to talk about this one key concept: divide and rule. This wasn't some conspiracy theory, it was a well-known imperial playbook. The logic is pretty simple. A united population is strong and hard to control, but if you can break it up into smaller groups, maybe even get them to compete with each other, they become way easier to manage. This idea is absolutely central to understanding why so many people were suspicious of the partition.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the two faces of the partition. Publicly, the story was all about efficiency. Curzon went around eastern Bengal promising new development, better administration, the whole shebang. But behind the scenes, Indian nationalists saw something else entirely. And their suspicions were pretty much confirmed by the private writings of British officials. The Home Secretary, H.H. Risley, actually wrote, "Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull in several different ways." See, Bengal was the hotbed of the independence movement, a place where Hindus and Muslims were increasingly working together against the British. The real goal, nationalists argued, was to smash that unity.
So the motives were, well, they were complicated. Now, let's move on from the why and look at the how. How was this line actually drawn on the map? What did the plan look like?
This table breaks it all down nice and clear. The old Bengal gets chopped in two. On one side, you have the new Bengal, with Calcutta as its capital and a clear Hindu majority. On the other, you get eastern Bengal and Assam, with its capital at Dhaka. And this is the crucial part. It was specifically designed to have a Muslim majority. So when you look at the data, it's pretty obvious this wasn't just a random geographical split. It was engineered along religious lines.
As you can probably guess, a move this drastic didn't just happen quietly. The announcement of the partition set off a political and emotional firestorm like British India had never seen before. Just listen to those words. "My golden Bengal, I love you." That's from a song by the great Rabindranath Tagore, written right in the middle of all the protests. And it just perfectly captures the soul of the resistance. For so many Bengalis, this wasn't just redrawing a line on a map. It felt like a violation of their motherland, a deep insult to their culture. And incredibly, that very song would one day become the national anthem of Bangladesh.
The protest wasn't just emotional, though. It was organized and it was smart. The day the partition officially happened was declared a day of mourning. People fasted. In this incredible show of unity, Hindus and Muslims tied Rakis, those symbolic wristbands, on each other's arms. But the most significant thing to come out of this were two powerful new protest methods: Swadeshi, which meant promoting Indian-made goods, and the boycott of British goods. The idea was to hit the empire right where it hurt, in the wallet.
But, and this is so important for us to understand, the reaction was not a monolith. Not everyone felt the same way. The Indian National Congress, of course, slammed it as a classic divide-and-rule move. Many Bengali Hindus were against it because in the new Bengal province, they'd actually be outnumbered by people who spoke Hindi and Oriya. They feared becoming a minority in their own heartland. But here's the twist. Many Muslims, especially in that neglected eastern part, actually welcomed the partition. For them, it looked like an opportunity. A new province where they were the majority, that could mean better jobs, better schools, and a real say in politics.
So, the protests raged on, but the partition went ahead, and its consequences, well, they would completely reshape the political landscape of India, creating new organizations and carving out deeper fault lines in society. Look at this timeline, because the cause and effect here is just crystal clear. 1905, partition happens. Just 1 year later, in 1906, what happens? The All India Muslim League is founded. And where? In Dhaka, the capital of the new Muslim-majority province. Now, its origins are complex, for sure, but there is no denying its formation was a direct response to this new political reality, an effort to protect Muslim interests in this new game. So, let's just boil it all down. What's the legacy here? The irony is that the Partition of Bengal actually supercharged the very nationalist movement it was trying to crush. It gave that movement powerful new weapons like Swadeshi and Boycott. But at the same time, Curzon's political goal tragically worked. It drove a deep wedge between Hindus and Muslims and directly led to the creation of a separate political party for Muslims. And all of this leaves us with one last, really profound question to think about. When you look at the method, dividing land along religious lines, and the kind of communal politics it kicked off, you have to wonder, was the Partition of Bengal in 1905 a tragic dress rehearsal for the much bigger and much bloodier Partition of India that would happen just 42 years later? That's definitely something to chew on.